All right, go get our jury, Ms. Mills. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Was everybody able to follow my instructions and admonitions over the break? All right, next witness.
Your Honor, the state will call Deputy Bott. I do.
Deputy.
Since August of 2014.
As a member of the crime scene unit for the Sheriff's Office, what are your duties and responsibilities?
Our duties are to arrive at felonious crime scenes, process them, and preserve the evidence.
And does this require any advanced training?
Yes, all members of the crime scene team have to be an evidence technician prior to being put on the team. And then once on the team, you're expected to attain your Master Evidence Technician certification through the state.
Did you obtain your evidence technician training?
Yes, I've had my Master Evidence Technician since 2014.
And where did you obtain that?
Through OPATA, the state commission.
What is OPATA?
It is the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy.
Thank you. And then you said you are at some point supposed to obtain your Master E-Tech?
Yes, that's what I got in 2014.
That was through, so let me clarify, was your basic evidence technician training through OPATA?
Yes, in 2011.
And then you also secured your Master Evidence Technician?
Yes, in 2014.
Have you attended any advanced training beyond that?
I've also went to the University of Tennessee's Forensic Anthropology Outdoor Recovery course, otherwise known as the Body Farm. A 2-acre facility, and they take donated bodies and put them in all different types of circumstances and then watch their decomposition, gauge it scientifically. They also do body burials and recoveries, and they teach law enforcement how to do this.
And you attended that course as well?
Yes.
Now, you've been referring to 2014. Did you have prior employment before that?
Yes, I was employed at the City of Monroe as a police officer.
And how long were you with the City of Monroe?
For 5 years.
Thank you, Deputy. I'd like to direct your attention to July 20th of 2017 and ask if you were working on that date.
I was not working.
At some point during that day, did you have occasion in your official capacity as a member of the crime scene unit to get called into work?
I was called by Sergeant Nomofsky at about 1:30 p.m. And he requested that I respond as the crime scene unit because the forensic anthropologist who was evaluating the skeletal remains that had previously been found believed that the bones showed evidence of burning prior to decomposition.
And those were bones that were excavated on the 14th of July?
I'm not entirely sure of the date, but they were excavated from 104 Eagle Ridge.
Prior to July 20th?
Yes.
And so in your official capacity with the crime scene unit, did you in fact respond to a residence located at 104 Eagle Ridge Drive in Carlisle, Warren County, Ohio?
I did.
And who else was with you on that date?
Detective Beheimer, Deputy Hammonds, Coroner Uptegrove, and Coroner Investigator Burke.
And did that entire group respond to the residence?
We did.
When you responded to that location, were there any family members present?
Not that I know of.
Okay. And when you first get there, do you recall approximately what time it is?
We got on scene at the house just a bit before 5 p.m.
Okay. Were you aware that a search warrant had been obtained for that second date?
Yes, Lieutenant Fain had obtained a search warrant.
Okay. And when you first get to the scene, can you please walk us through how you initially began your processing on that date?
Deputy Beheimer put up the crime scene tape around the house. And
when you say the house, is it the house and the yard, or is it just the structure of the house?
yes, he went in the yard outside of the house. on both sides and all the way to the back property line as far as he
Okay,
could.
thank you.
At that point, I started taking exterior photographs of the home and the yard. We knew they had a fire pit on the northwestern side of the home, and having gotten information that they believed the body had been burned, we were going to primarily investigate that fire pit.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Deputy, I'm showing you what's been marked States Exhibit 41 through 52 for purposes of identification. Can you please take a look at those photographs? You recognize those photographs, Deputy?
Yes.
And can you tell us, are those the photographs that were obtained of the scene that was processed on July 20th at the defendant's residence?
Yes, these are the photographs that I took.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene that you observed on that date?
Yes, they do.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 41 for purposes of identification, Deputy. Can you please tell us what's depicted in this photograph?
This is the northwestern side of the home and the fire pit that I mentioned earlier. In this corner here, you can see those are our buckets that we were intending to use to put the dirt from the fire pit into. And then it goes back to the backyard of the home. You may have seen these in prior photos up against the wood line in the backyard.
And let me ask you this, Deputy. Although you have information that there may have been burn injury to the skeletal remains, do you have any information as to where or how or in what manner that burn may or may not have occurred?
Not at this time.
So when you are starting at this fire pit, is that just because it's a source of fire?
We knew the fire pit was there, and we figured if you're going to burn something, you're probably going to use a fire pit.
But you didn't have any direct knowledge or evidence to indicate that something did or did not occur in that fire pit?
No, we also knew that they had not examined the fire pit when they were at the home previously.
Okay. So when you start examining the fire pit, what, if anything, do you do?
We pulled these, there was a pallet and some other debris on top of the fire pit. We pulled those off. And after we took those off, we found some bones laying on the surface of the ash on the pit. So we collected those bones. Coroner Uptegrove examined them briefly on scene and said they appeared to be animal and not human. But we did collect them anyways to be further examined. At that point, we gridded the fire pit off into quadrants, and Detective Beheimer excavated the dirt in quadrants into our evidence buckets.
And Deputy, did you find anything in the fire pit that didn't appear to be animal bone?
We did not.
Okay. And you mentioned another individual. Was Coroner, you had mentioned the individuals from the crime scene unit. Was Coroner Uptegrove also present with you on
Yes.
this search? While you are in the process of looking through the fire pit, do you receive a call from Lieutenant Fain?
I believe Coroner Investigator Burke is the one who received that phone call.
And were you aware that on that date, Lieutenant Fain was talking to the defendant at another location?
Yes.
And was information shared with those of you that were at the scene that she had disclosed where the burial site was at?
Yes, at that point, Lieutenant Fain told us that Ms. Richardson had disclosed to him that she actually tried to or did burn the body at the gravesite before burying it.
And did you have any information based on the prior search where the gravesite was located?
Yes, we knew the location of the gravesite.
Okay, showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 42 for purposes of identification. Can you tell us what is depicted in this photograph, Deputy?
This is the backyard tree line of the property, and we're almost dead on like where the gravesite is. It's in this general area back in the tree line.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 43 for purposes of identification. What are we looking at in that photograph, Deputy?
This is the identified gravesite area.
And there appears to be a playhouse or something sitting right behind it?
Yes.
And is that what that is, a child's playhouse?
It looks
or?
like it was made out of plastic, like children's playhouses are made out of. It had a few items inside of it.
Once you go back to the original burial site, Deputy, what do you do at that time?
At first, we just do a surface level scan of the area. We knew that obviously it had already been excavated and all the soil had been put back into the burial site. So the bones had already been disturbed. My concern, we knew that we were missing the leg bones and the feet bones from what had already been recovered. So initially I'm looking for long bones. Those are going to be what's easiest to find. Knowing that it had already been excavated and put back, I'm expecting maybe some of those bones are just going to be on the surface. It had also been several days since the prior excavation and it had rained since then. This was on a slight grade, so we also checked downhill a bit from the gravesite area.
Deputy, showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 44 for purposes of identification. Can you tell us what is depicted in this photograph?
This is a top-down look at the gravesite, and so you can see the general shape and then the ivy covering, already covering back what was excavated prior. There's also one long bone in this picture in this general area. There's a closer picture too, I believe, right?
Yes. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 46. And let me go back out.
So this is a long bone just sitting on the surface of the grave.
And is that a closer up?
Even closer picture of it.
And was that, in fact, one of the missing long bones?
Yes.
For the legs? Deputy, showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 48 for purposes of identification. What is depicted in that photograph?
This is another wide shot of an area where another bone was located. I think it might be upside down, but
I'll show you a close-up
Yeah.
of that. State's Exhibit 49 for purposes of identification.
so this is the second long bone that we found on the surface of the grave.
And you kind of explained that, but was it surprising that bones that had not been found before were now up towards the surface?
Not at all.
And why is that?
When you dig out a grave site, you disturb it. Everything gets jumbled around, and they didn't take the soil from the grave initially to examine for anything else. They just put all that soil back into the grave site. So they've jumbled it all up. It's all been mushed around and then put back. Kind of like when you drop your grave. Now they're exposed up on the surface. And that's exactly what happened. It's just from the grave having been selected them to be evaluated at the lab.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 50 for purposes of identification. Can you tell us what we're looking at in that photograph?
This is one of those small bones that we're speaking of. Again, just it's on the surface, just in the grass.
And showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51 for purposes of identification. Is that a close-up?
Yes, that's
Of
a
that same
close-up
bone?
of that what we believe to be a small bone.
And were those bones collected, photographed, and packaged?
Yes, they were.
Did you also take a look inside of that plastic children's house, if you will,
Yes.
showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 45 for purposes of identification?
This is inside the playhouse. There's like a bamboo pole here, and there's maybe an article of clothing back there, and then a lot of ivy has grown up in it.
And other than photographing and documenting the entire scene back there, do you know if there's anything located in this house that had any evidentiary value as it related to the case?
No, after just glancing inside, we didn't see anything that appeared to be skeletal.
Did you find a small piece of cloth near the gravesite,
Yes, on the surface.
showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 52 for purposes of identification? Can you tell us what we're looking at in that photograph?
These here are actually two small pieces of frayed cloth. We were told that the infant may or may not have been wrapped in a cloth at some point, so these items were collected.
And again, other than receiving some of that general information, did you know whether or not that small article of clothing or cloth or what have you had any relationship to the burial site and/or any evidentiary value?
No, I did not.
You said that it appeared frayed on the ends.
Yes.
Was there any indication of any burn marks on it?
It didn't appear to have been burned. Just looking at it with my naked eye, it didn't appear to be burned, just frayed.
At that time, was all of the soil from the gravesite collected?
Yes, Dr. Uptegrove excavated the grave soil again and into our collection buckets.
And were all of the bone fragments in the soil released then to the coroner's office?
Yes.
Deputy, approximately how long were you at the scene on that date?
We were on scene about 2 hours, maybe a little over 2 hours.
After the crime scene unit completed processing the scene on July 20th of 2017, did you have any further involvement in the investigation of the defendant?
No.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Richards, any questions?
Deputy Vaught?
Vaught.
Vaught, sorry. Deputy Vaught, what time did you arrive at Eagle Ridge?
A little bit before 5 p.m.
And one of the purposes was not only to excavate the fire pit, but to go back to the original gravesite, is that correct?
We were looking for the missing long bones, yes.
Missing long bones. And did I hear you say that you expected to find those long bones because they probably got lost when they were digging up all the soil and stuff?
Yes.
This is the second search of that gravesite, is that correct?
Yes.
And the first grave site search was July 14th?
I wasn't involved in it.
You weren't there?
No.
And nobody informed you about anything about what happened at the gravesite during the first search?
I knew that they had searched it. I actually went and reviewed their photos from that day before going to the scene on the 20th.
Mm-hmm. Did you review this particular photo? I'm going to put on this device here. It's marked as Defendant's Exhibit FFF. Did you review that photo?
If it was in the group of photos from the prior excavation, then yes, and then I looked at it.
You did look at it. Do you notice the brush
Yes.
in that photo? We just heard from Deputy McKay, who was there at the first search, and she indicated to us that everything was just below the surface, meaning they didn't dig anything.
Okay.
So would that in any way change your opinion that these bones all of a sudden appeared because there was soil that was disturbed and dug up and everything like that? That change your opinion?
No, because there was soil that was disturbed and dug up. You can see the skeletal remains are not laying just on the surface, correct?
Correct.
So there was at least some digging and disruption of the soil that occurred.
Well, if I recall Deputy McKay's testimony, she said all they had to do was brush away the soil to get to the skeletal remains.
Okay.
Just tell them.
So then they were very close to the surface.
Exactly.
And I had explained that it did rain in the meantime. There was still disruption to the gravesite.
I notice also, you didn't notice the big flower pot that was there the first time, did you, when you were there at the second visit?
The flower pot was still there. It was moved. It wasn't on the gravesite anymore.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Anything else? Thank you, Deputy. Step down. Next witness?
You are given these proceedings to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Sir, would you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
John Michael Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Where are you employed, sir?
The Warren County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed there?
Over 18 years now.
What do your present duties consist of?
I'm a supervisor for road patrol and Deerfield.
Okay. Are you also a member of the Warren County Crime Scene Unit?
Yes, I'm one of the supervisors assigned to that team.
Okay. Is there any type of special training that you have to go to be part of the crime scene unit?
Yes, you have to be an evidence technician to be a member.
And are you an evidence technician?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any further training than that, sir?
Yes, I'm certified as a master evidence technician through the state of Ohio.
What does that mean to be a master evidence technician?
That's just further training that you have to attend over a course of several years, and then you finally obtain that certification once you reach all the standards set by the state.
How long have you been certified as a master evidence technician?
I believe 2009.
Okay. I want to direct your attention first to July the 14th of 2017. Did you receive a call-out notification for the crime scene unit?
Yes, I did.
And eventually, did you respond to 104 Eagle Ridge Drive in Carlisle, Warren County, Ohio?
Yes, we did.
There has already been a lot of testimony this afternoon about what occurred at that first search warrant on July 14th, 2014, but you were present, is that correct?
That's correct.
What was your role there, sir?
To process the crime scene in regards to the allegations of there being a baby buried on the property.
Okay. And you're aware that photographs were taken?
Yes, sir.
And ultimately, the skeletal remains of an infant child were collected on July the 14th of 2017.
That is correct.
And those were sent with the Warren County coroner and his investigator, Dr. Uptegrove and Doyle Berg.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you also aware that there was a search warrant that was conducted on that residence, 104 Eagle Ridge Drive in Carlisle, Warren County, Ohio, on July 20th of 2017?
There was one that I did not attend. I believe that may have been it, sir.
And that was going to be my next question. You weren't present at that second search warrant on July 20th with Deputy Vaught, is that correct?
I was not.
Okay. And there was actually a third search warrant that was conducted on that residence on July 24th of 2017, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Were you involved in that?
Yes, I was.
How did you become involved, sir?
I received another notification that they needed the crime scene unit to go and process the residence.
Okay. Did the crime scene unit assemble?
Yes, we did.
Where did that occur at?
We generally assemble at the main office and then respond out to the scene.
Okay. And did that occur in this case?
Yes.
Can you describe the scene when you, well, let me ask you this first. What was the reason that you were responding a third time? What were you going there for?
They wanted us to process the interior of the residence and to find any electronics and seize those. And they also wanted us to process for any types of latent blood in the residence.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
They wanted us to process the scene for any types of latent blood.
Blood? Okay. And to your knowledge, is this the first time that the Warren County Sheriff's Office really searched the interior of that residence there at 104 Eagle Ridge Drive?
To my knowledge, and I know it was the first time the crime scene unit had went inside the residence.
Okay. What happened when you responded to the scene on that date?
We waited for the search warrant to be signed as customary that we do. And once we obtained that, knew it was signed, we made contact at the residence.
Was anyone at the residence, sir?
The family was there, sir.
Okay. And specifically, was the defendant, Brooke Skylar Richardson, there?
Yes, she was.
Did you make contact with Ms. Richardson, sir?
I did make contact with her.
What was the purpose of making contact with her?
A DNA sample standard was, they wanted us to collect one from her, and I explained to her how we would collect that sample.
What's the reason that a DNA standard would be requested from her?
If her DNA profile is not on file, the lab needs her profile to see if there's any DNA that we collect to where they can compare it to.
Okay. And so you spoke with her about obtaining that sample?
Yes, I did.
And how did that conversation go?
She just acknowledged that she understood. There was no verbal exchange.
Okay. And did either you or one of your other deputies actually conduct or perform a buccal swab of the defendant, Ms. Richardson?
Yes, Deputy Kelly Hammonds did.
Were you present when that occurred?
Yes, I was.
And did you have an opportunity to observe that?
Yes, I did.
Could you explain to the jury the process in which you take a buccal swab from somebody?
When we take a buccal swab, the first thing that we do is we make sure that we have on gloves and a mask so that we don't contaminate the sample in any way with our DNA. Then we explain to the person we're collecting it from how we're going to collect it. And in this case, she was instructed that we would collect it by putting, it looks like a small Q-tip in your mouth, and we'll collect inside your mouth to make sure that we obtain saliva and skin samples from inside your mouth.
Marked for identification purposes of State's Exhibit number 88. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
There's an evidence envelope that is used by our agency when we collect evidence.
Okay. And does it indicate what type of evidence was collected?
Buccal swab from Brooke Richardson.
And does it indicate who collected that?
Deputy Hammonds.
And if you could, and that you were present when he collected that buccal swab, is that correct?
That's correct.
If you could go ahead and cut that open and open it, please. And before you remove the contents, from looking at the outer packaging, can you tell, has that buccal swab been submitted to any other agencies?
Yes, there's identification on here that it was placed into our evidence. And then on the reverse side, it has Miami Valley Crime Lab Laboratory case
Okay.
number.
And so that would have then been also submitted to the Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you could go ahead and remove the contents. And what are we looking at? What's inside?
These are the buccal swabs or Q-tips that we use when we collect DNA or when we swab an area where we want to collect any type of a sample that would contain DNA.
And are there actually initials on that container from people from the Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab?
Yes, sir. And they match the sticker that's on their crime lab submission.
And is that the sample that would have been collected from Brooke Skylar Richardson back on July 24th of 2017?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you could put that back into the container, please. After obtaining the buccal swab from Ms. Richardson, what did you do at the scene?
Once we obtained her swab, we started processing the individual rooms.
Okay. And if you could describe for the jury the layout of the Richardson home, where are the bedrooms located?
When you walk in the main entrance, just off to the right would be, I guess, their dining room and kitchen area. Then there's I think there's an access that goes out to the garage. Then there's a staircase that goes up to the second-story bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. And then off of the main family room area, the master bedroom is adjoining to it.
That's all on, the master bedroom is on the first floor?
The master bedroom is on the first floor, yes.
Okay, and then what about as you move upstairs?
As you move upstairs, when you go up to the top of the stairs, there is a guest room or an office off to the left. Adjoining to it is a bathroom. Then there is another room that I believe was maybe the brothers. And then you have Brooke's bedroom, who is off to the right at the end of the hallway.
Okay. And you indicated you began processing these rooms, is that right?
That's correct.
Let's start with downstairs in the master bedroom. Was that believed to be the bedroom of Skylar's parents, Kim and Scott Richardson?
Yes, by everything that was associated with that room, I believe it is their bedroom.
Okay. Was anything collected from that room, sir?
Yes, electronics were.
Okay. And is it fair to say there were numerous electronic devices that were collected from the Richardson home on July 24th of 2017?
Yes, there were.
Okay. After the master bedroom, did you also collect electronic devices from the spare room or the office upstairs that you described?
Yes, Deputy Kelly Hammonds and I did.
Okay. And then were you also in the second-story bathroom?
Yes.
Were there photographs taken of that second-story bathroom, sir?
Yes, there were.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 57, 58, and 59. You'll briefly take a look at those. Tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, this is the second-story bathroom.
Do all of those photographs fairly and accurately depict the second-story bathroom as you came upon it on July 24th?
Yes, they do.
I'm going to put State's Exhibit number 50. State's Exhibit number 57 on the screen. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 57, please?
The vanity and the toilet in the second-story bathroom.
And putting State's Exhibit 58 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That would be the bathtub shower in the second-story bathroom.
And also State's Exhibit number 59.
That is another photograph of the toilet in the second-story bathroom.
Okay. And I actually want to show you State's Exhibit 56 as well. Could you take a look at that? Will you recognize what you're looking at?
That is the hallway and the entrance to the second-story bathroom.
And again, does that photo fairly and accurately depict the scene on that day?
Yes, sir, it does.
And so again, if you could describe for the jury, what exactly are we looking at in this photograph?
That is the, if you were standing in front of the bedroom next to Skylar's or standing outside of her bedroom and looking down the hallway, this would be the entrance to the second-story bathroom.
In addition to photographing the second-story bathroom, did you also have an opportunity to photograph Skylar's bedroom?
Yes, sir, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 60, 66, 67, 68, 69, 71, 72, and 78. You can take a look at those photographs and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
These are all photographs of Ms. Richardson's room or items collected out of her room.
And do all of those photographs fairly and accurately depict Ms. Richardson's room as you came upon it on July 24th of 2017?
Yes, they do.
Putting State's Exhibit 60 on the screen. Describe for the jury, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 60, please?
From the main entrance of the doorway, when you would walk into Ms. Richardson's room, this is the first photograph that was taken, and it just shows the layout of her bedroom.
Putting State's Exhibit 61 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
This is another picture of Ms. Richardson's room, and just a few steps inside of the room as we're starting to take overall photographs.
Putting State's Exhibit 62 on the screen, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit number 62, please?
This is one of the tables in Ms. Richardson's room that contain some of the items that would later be identified in some of the further pictures.
Your Honor, may we approach one
You
second?
may. Sure.
Putting State's Exhibit 63 on the screen, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit number 63, please?
There was a package of, I believe, birth control pills that were collected.
From Skylar's room?
Yes, sir.
Putting State's Exhibit 64 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is just another overall picture of the room describing or showing the state that we found it in.
Placing State's Exhibit 65 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
There's another photograph of Ms. Richardson's room that showed the closet in her room.
Putting State's Exhibit 66 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is a window that faces to the rear of the property. If you're looking out that window, you're facing east. You're looking east.
Placing State's Exhibit 67 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Those are additional items that were located in Ms. Richardson's room that were collected into evidence.
Okay. Placing State's Exhibit 68 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is one of the dresser drawers in Ms. Richardson's room. And the placard identifies that we collected an item from that drawer that was a lighter.
Placing State's Exhibit 69 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That's another picture of the previous photo, just with the further close-up so you can identify the item that was collected.
And that is a lighter you indicated?
Yes, sir, it's a lighter.
Is that like in a dresser, do you recall?
Yeah, it's in a dresser drawer in her bedroom.
Okay. Putting State's Exhibit 71 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is a photograph of Miss Richardson's bed. Once the sheet was removed, these were the items that were located underneath of it.
Could you tell, Sergeant, did it appear that Ms. Richardson's bed had been moved in any way?
We had been informed that the bed had been moved in that position that we found it in on that day.
What do you mean it had been moved in that position?
The headboard used to be where you saw the window. The headboard was against that wall where the window was. On the day that we went and processed her room, it had been rotated 90 degrees left to where the headboard was now on the north-facing wall, where you see it in the photographs here.
Okay. And as a result of having obtained that information, did you look underneath the bed?
Yes, sir, we did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 72. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Once the mattress was removed, there was a box spring. We removed the box spring, and there was items and property underneath of the bed that was also collected.
Okay. And then putting State's Exhibit 78 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is a laptop computer that was underneath the bed that we collected and placed into evidence.
Is there anything on the carpet next to the laptop computer?
Yes, there's a area there that has a brownish tint just to the left of that computer, and also just
If
right.
you want, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sergeant.
Sure.
You can actually touch the screen
Okay.
to notify the jurors exactly what you're talking about.
The brownish liquid was there and here, and then in between those, there was a area that was depressed where the carpet fibers had been removed, and it appeared that from all aspects that it had been scrubbed intensely, removing some of those fibers, causing a slight depression.
When you found that stain that you're talking about, was there an effort made to swab that location?
Yes, there was a swab taken from that area.
And did you perform that swab yourself, or did another deputy do that?
Another deputy did that.
Were you present when that occurred?
Yes.
Could you explain to the jury the process when you're taking a buccal swab or a swab of a stain like that? How is that done?
In an area like this here, we would take the Q-tip, as we call it a DNA swab, but for all, so that you understand, it's just looks just like a Q-tip, and we'll take distilled water if we're going to be collecting it from a dried substance, so that those particles or the parts that we want to collect will adhere to it better. Once we put the distilled water on that, we will collect the sample from the suspected area, and then we'll seal that in an envelope.
We're going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 89. You'll take a look at that. Tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
This is an evidence envelope containing a DNA swab from the floor.
And does it indicate at the bottom of that form where exactly that was taken from?
Yes, suspect bedroom under the bed.
And so that would that have been from this area here described in State's Exhibit 78 that swab would have been taken from?
Yes, sir.
And again, with respect to looking at the packaging for the State's Exhibit, does it appear that packaging has been sent to any other agencies?
Yes, first our evidence room, and then on the reverse, it has the same labeling from the Miami Valley Regional Crime Laboratory.
Okay. As a result of finding that stain, was the bed taken apart?
The bed wasn't taken apart, but it was lifted and moved out of the way the best we could in the room.
Okay. And were you able to do any blue star analysis of that area depicted in State's Exhibit number 78?
Yes, sir, we did.
Could you first explain to the jury what is blue star?
Blue star is a forensic chemical that reacts with the hemoglobin in blood. And when you spray it over a surface where blood has been or has been removed, it will react and it will illuminate intensely when it reacts with the hemoglobin in blood.
And did you have an opportunity to do, I believe you said yes, but I want to make sure, to do blue star analysis of this area here that was described in State's Exhibit 78?
Yes, sir, we did.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 79. You can take a look at that, tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, sir, that's a photograph depicting the reaction the Blue Star had when we used it in the room.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to put State's Exhibit 79 on the screen. If you can clear, there should be a way if you hit the What are we seeing in State's Exhibit 79, Sergeant?
Once we sprayed the Blue Star over the suspected area and it dimmed the lights in the room, this is the illumination that we observed when the Blue Star contacted that area.
And is this for people that have never seen or used Blue Star, is this typical illumination? Is there anything different or special about this illumination?
This illumination was almost immediate. There was no prolonged, and it had a very intense illumination, that means that there was a large concentration of blood in that area.
Did you draw any conclusions from looking at this picture, sir?
Well, we had been told that Miss Richardson had given birth to a child, and when I saw this, I immediately thought that this was probably the location where that child had been laid upon. at
Why
some
is
point in
that?
time. When I saw this, I could see the outline of a small torso.
Did you or other deputies then attempt to cut out that portion of the carpet?
Yes, we did remove that portion of the carpet.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 80, 81, and 82. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, that's the area of the rug that was sprayed with Blue Star and removed.
And are those all fair and accurate depictions of what's being depicted in the photographs?
Yes, sir, they are.
I'm going to put State's Exhibit 80 on the screen. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 80, please?
That is where the carpet was cut out, and you can see the foam padding.
That foam padding would be what's underneath the carpet, is that correct?
Yes, sir, underneath the carpet.
Okay. Putting State's Exhibit 81 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Another photograph showing the foam padding and then the subfloor in the bedroom.
And putting State's Exhibit number 82 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is the removed portion of the carpet that turned upside down. It's showing the underside of the carpet.
Okay. Did you also use Blue Star on the underside of that carpet that was found in Ms. Richardson's bedroom?
Yes, sir, we did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 83. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, that's a photograph of the area underneath the carpet.
Does it fairly and accurately depict the image in the photograph?
Yes, sir, it does.
Putting State's Exhibit 83 on the screen. What are we looking at again in State's Exhibit number 83?
That is a photograph once the Blue Star was sprayed to the piece of carpet that was removed.
And so it's still reacting even to the underside of that piece of carpet that was found in her room?
Yes, sir.
Did you have an opportunity to collect that piece of carpet, sir?
Yes, we did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 90. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, this identifies as the carpet and padding that was collected underneath Ms. Richardson's bed.
Okay. If you could go ahead and open that, please. And again, sir, as you're opening that, do you also see labels on the packaging indicating that that had been sent to the Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab?
Yes, sir, they are on here.
Okay, thank you. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask that Sergeant Smith be allowed to walk up and down so that he can show the jurors both sides of that carpet.
That's fine.
And if you could, Sergeant, as you're walking, if you could show them any areas of significance that you found on the carpet, either with respect to any stains or with respect to the rubbing area that you said it appeared had been scrubbed.
This here was the brown areas that we're talking about. Draw our attention. This here is the depressed area where the carpet fibers are good. You can see that it's at a lower level than the rest of the carpet. On the reverse side, the stains that bled through.
Sergeant Smith, I
Yes.
can't have you testify from there, but if you could just point out to what you're talking about and then return to the stand.
This here is the depressed area that I was describing in the picture that you saw, and I'll point that out. The tension.
Sir, obviously, you know from the packaging that's been sent to the crime lab, but does that still appear to be in the same or substantially same condition as when it was collected on July 24th?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. If you could go ahead and put that back into the packaging, please. Sergeant, in addition to using Blue Star in the defendant's bedroom, was it also used in the hallway area between the bedroom and the bathroom on the second story?
Yes, it was.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 84. You can take a look at that, tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
That's a photograph that was taken in the hallway with the use of Blue Star.
I'll put it on the screen. So does this fairly and accurately depict the photo that was taken in the hallway?
Yes, sir, it does.
I'm going to put State's Exhibit 84 on the screen. If you could describe for the jurors what exactly are we looking at in State's Exhibit 84, please.
This is the hallway that leads from Miss Richardson's bedroom to the bathroom on the second story. And we had applied Blue Star to this area, and we had the reaction that shows a footprint on the floor and then a faint footprint just to the other side of it.
And what is that object that's at the very top of the screen?
This here, sir?
Yes, sir.
That is the tripod that we used. When we take these photographs, they have to be taken over an exposure time that if we held it with our hands, it would be real shaky. So we had to have a tripod to use.
Sir, can you tell from looking at the footprint depicted in the photograph that's illuminated by the blue star, is that heading towards the bathroom or is that walking away from the bathroom, from the defendant's room? If
That
you
was walking towards the bathroom. We took
Okay.
that photograph.
Sergeant, I'm also going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 85, 86, and 87. You can take a look at those and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Those are photographs of the second-story bedroom, or bathroom, sorry, the hallway, and then a photograph with the use of Blue Star in some of those areas.
Do all of the photographs fairly and accurately depict the images as you found them on July 24th?
Yes, sir, they did.
Let's start with State's Exhibit 85. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That is the second-story bathroom and the entrance where carpet was collected.
Okay. And what's the reason that carpet was collected there?
The Blue Star had reacted in that area, so we took that carpet as a sample as well.
Okay. And you indicated, did you use Blue Star on that carpet piece that was located in that area before the carpet was cut up and collected?
Yes, sir, we did.
Putting State's Exhibit 86 on the screen. If you could describe for the jury, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 86?
That is a photograph of the hallway on the second story.
Okay. And again, there's illumination in this photograph?
Yes, we had used Blue Star in that area, and it showed that there was a transfer of blood somewhere in that area.
Okay. And can you tell, is this photograph, is that Blue Star in that same area, like right before you would walk into the bathroom, if you can tell?
This area here that was photographed was right outside and in the main area of the hallway.
Okay.
There's a larger area there in the
Okay.
hallway.
And then finally putting State's Exhibit 87 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
The use of Blue Star in the second story bathroom.
And what is this indicative of, if anything?
There was presence of blood in that area.
On all of the
Blue Star.
areas where it's illuminated?
Yes, and some of the, you can see where some of it was, has a circular motion, which is indicative of.
Back to your processing of the entire scene, there were other areas in the home and outside of the home that you photographed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I want to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77. You just briefly take a look at those and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, sir, I recognize the pictures.
And are those all photographs that were taken on July 24th of 2017?
Yes, sir.
And all of the photographs fairly and accurately depict the images contained in the photograph?
Yes, sir, they did.
I want to start with State's Exhibit 73. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 73, please?
That is a small dresser or table that is just inside the main entrance of the home, right next to the staircase that goes upstairs.
And then placing State's Exhibit 74 on the screen. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 74, please?
In that table from the previous photograph, There's a 25 placard inside there to identify that we collected the big lighter in that drawer.
Putting State's Exhibit 75 on the screen. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 75, please?
That is the exterior of the home, and on this side of the house where it's being photographed, it faces towards the north. And those are items that were collected outside that have been identified.
And what were those items, please?
Another lighter and some charcoal lighter fluid.
Okay. Putting State's Exhibit 76 on the screen. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit number 76, please?
That is a storage bin in relation to where the previous photo that you had just seen. Just at the corner of that wall, there were some storage bins just around the corner. And in those storage bins were these bleach containers and the alcohol containers.
And putting State's Exhibit 77.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, sir.
Inquire at this time?
Sergeant Smith, I want to go over these pictures of Skylar's bedroom. I'm going to show you what we've marked as plaintiff's exhibit PPP. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
That's one of the pictures you identified for the prosecutor.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the way that bedroom looked right before you guys went in to search it.
When I photographed it, that's how I found it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Show you what's been marked as defendant's QQQ. Is that another photograph that you took of Skylar's bedroom?
As I found it. Yes, sir.
Different angle.
Yes, sir.
Teddy bear, was that a teddy bear on top of the bed?
It looks like some type of a stuffed animal, sir.
Yeah, and the stuffed animals on the floor, is that what that looks like?
There's something on the floor. Yes, sir.
And this is her desk, picture of her desk, is that correct?
Table in her room as I found it. Yes, sir.
And this is her, by the way, for the record, that was defendant's exhibit RRR.
Okay.
Defendant's exhibit SSS, that's a picture of her dressing table where she did her makeup and stuff.
Yes, as I photographed it. Yes, sir.
And different, little bit different angle. That's defendant's exhibit UUU. Is that correct? The mattress of the bed after the sheet was taken off, and I'll show you what we've marked as, it looks like C. Defendant's Exhibit M. Recognize that picture?
Can you turn it right side up, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we see that pretty well?
Yes. That is some of the contents in Miss Richardson's room.
This is after your search?
Yes, sir.
Anybody put that back?
Not to my knowledge.
Show you defendant's Exhibit N, N as in Nancy. Recognize that picture?
Yes, that is Ms. Richardson's room.
Anybody put any of that stuff back?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Let's show you Defendant's Exhibit O. Recognize that?
Yes, that is Ms. Richardson's bedroom.
Any of your officers put that back?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
I read your report while you were testifying, and you mentioned something that looked like a torso in the bedroom.
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah, you didn't mention that in your report.
I was asked what it looked like, sir.
Well, you also, I thought you said that you took a picture and you concentrated on that because you thought it looked like a baby's torso. Didn't I hear that correctly?
No, they asked what I thought it was, and I explained what I thought it was.
This search is 2.5 months after Skylar delivered a stillborn, right?
Objection.
I'll overrule the objection. Ladies and gentlemen, and this goes to what I told you way back in voir dire. I know it seems like a long time ago. The attorneys are going to use their version of what they believe the facts are. So one attorney may use the term stillborn, somebody might use victim, somebody might call it a crime, somebody might call it a crime scene. It is your job to determine what the facts bear out, not to pay any attention as to how the attorneys characterize that. So the objection is overruled. Mr. Rickers, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know if you answered my question.
I did not. Can you ask me again?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
I understand. This search occurred on July 24th, 2.5 months after Skylar gave birth to a stillbirth, correct?
That's what was reported, sir.
Thank you. Now, I don't know if anybody told you, but Skylar bled for 3 days after she gave birth. You aware of that?
I was not, sir.
If you were made aware of that, would all this blood that you found be unusual?
Depending on where she bled, sir. May not.
What about the fact that maybe she bled in 2016? You'd find that blood too, wouldn't you, on the carpet?
I would not find the blood, but there would be, that's what the blue star is used for, to identify what areas of blood were, sir.
Yeah. And so that, all this blood could be from different times, correct? You can't date
I don't know
you
where
can't,
the blood came from.
You don't know where the blood came from. Fair enough. And you don't know when that blood was put on the carpet.
By my processing, no, sir.
And you're aware that you took all these samples and sent them away for DNA
I did
analysis. You aware of that?
I collected them, sir.
Who took it up to the...
That is the detective's prerogative, what is sent to the crime lab.
And did they inform you that there was no Annabelle blood found?
We did
Or
not discuss the
DNA?
case.
Did they? No. Let me ask a question. Did the prosecutor inform you that there was no DNA of Annabelle found in that bedroom?
I never just had that discussion with them, no, sir.
Detective Carter and Detective Fain was there.
I'm sorry?
I said Detective Carter and Detective Fain were both there during the search.
I believe Detective Beheimer and Detective Carter were there when I was on the 24th.
Can you play?
Hang on. I'm sorry, John.
It's a soundtrack from one of your recorders of, I'm not saying it's you,
Okay.
but some of your men looking at the blood in the bathroom. And that was John Fain that was referred to. Is there something funny about looking for blood in the bathroom?
Do you want me to make an assumption as to what the sounds were on that? Is that what you want me
You
to
can
answer
make the
you, sir?
assumption if you want, yeah.
It sounds like someone was reacting to the reaction of the Blue Star when it reacted to the blood in the area, identifying that there was blood in that area. That's what I heard.
So you didn't hear anybody laughing?
No, I heard excitement that there was evidence found by the
And
Blue Star.
Was that it? Do you now remember John Fain being there?
I do not recall John Fain. I recall Sergeant Houndshell assisting me with the Blue Star.
Let's talk about these photos that the prosecutor wanted to show, and did show to the jury. The photograph of the lighter fluid.
Okay.
That was found, that photograph was the lighter fluid by the fire pit,
Yes, sir, it was.
close to the fire pit. And I think, was there anything else in that photo? I can't remember.
Yes, there was a lighter also on those bricks.
And is it unusual to find a lighter and lighter fluid next to a fire pit that's obviously been used?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Was there anything unusual about that actual can of lighter fluid?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
How about the lighter? Is there anything unusual about that?
The reason, do you want to know the reason?
No, I don't
why
want the
they were-
reason. I want to know if there was anything unusual about that lighter.
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
And by the way, I want to go back, speaking of lighters, when the prosecutor was showing you pictures of a dresser drawer, Skylar's dresser drawer, and you found a lighter in her drawer. Remember the scene with pulled it out and her jeans in that drawer? Remember that?
I do remember that, George, yes, sir.
Did you happen to take pictures of all the candles that are in her closet?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't think that was kind of important or that was relevant to the lighter that you found in her drawer?
May I express to you the relevance of why I took those photographs?
I'm just yeah,
Okay. In my report, you said you read it, sir.
I did.
Detective Carter and Beheimer searched that room. They identified items of interest they wanted photographed and collected. That's why they were photographed and collected.
Thank you for that clarification. So Carter didn't show you any of the candles in the closet, did she? She didn't ask you to take pictures of those, did she?
No, sir.
Thank you. You may have 1 minute, Judge.
Next witness?
You want me to take these evidence and resell them?
Yeah, you don't have to reseal them, you just set them on the. Okay.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
Anthony, you may proceed.
Thank you. Sir, would you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Russel Uptegrove, Uptegrove.
Sir, where are you employed?
I'm a pathologist at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in Dayton, and I'm also the Warren County Coroner.
What do your duties consist of, sir?
Performing autopsies and generalized death investigation.
You've actually had a busy day today, is that fair to say?
Yes, I have.
You were testifying in another county, up where was it at?
Richland County.
That was this morning?
Yes.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to July the 14th of 2017, where you contacted about responding to 104 Eagle Ridge Drive in Carlisle, Warren County, Ohio.
Yes, I was.
Who contacted you, sir?
Chief Investigator Doyle Burke with the Warren County Coroner's Office.
What information were you provided at that time?
He told me that there had been a call of potentially a dead baby that had been buried in a backyard of a residence.
Okay. Did you begin responding to that location?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe the scene when you got there? What was going on?
There was yellow police scene tape surrounding the yard. There were multiple Warren County sheriff deputies' vehicles present, numerous police officers, sheriff deputies present, and Investigator Burke had already been present at the scene when he called me.
Okay. And what specifically was going on at the burial scene when you got there?
Well, towards the rear part of the yard, adjacent to where there's a tree line and some other greenery, the sheriff deputies, evidence crew, they had already started to excavate the site. And what had happened was they had found a few small bones, and then when a few of the bones of the skull were subsequently recovered from the site, that was when Investigator Burke called me to let me know that indeed they had found remains and that they appeared to be human remains.
Okay. Are you aware, did they suspend their search at that time and wait for you to arrive?
Yes.
And so when you got there, some bones had already been recovered and the skull bones had already been recovered?
It's not every skull bone, but the larger bones of the skull had already been removed and had been laid out on a body bag, which was laying on the ground with a few of the other bones which had been removed from the site.
Okay. Explain to the jury, what do you do then when you get there?
Well, when I got there, I continued with the excavation or the removal of the bones from the actual site. Again, some of the dirt had already been turned up, so I continued in the exact location, removing additional bones, and in the process of going deeper, there was some small amount of residual decomposed tissue that was admixed with some of the dirt, admixed with the bones. So what I did was again, there was a fair amount of moisture still in that dirt, so things were kind of sticking together. So I removed what I could easily identify, and then what I did is I took a small trowel and dug probably 3 inches surrounding all the way around where the remains were being recovered to try to capture any other smaller items which may not have been visible to the naked eye because of the consistency of the dirt. So the bones were placed in a bag, and then this other material, which was mostly encompassing dirt and some other smaller items, was placed in a separate container.
Can you explain to them the process? How did you go about excavating it in terms of, is this you just going through with your hands and trying to comb through the dirt? Do you have any tools that you're using? How do you go about the actual excavation of the bones?
Well, like I said, I can't comment on how the bones were removed before I got there because
Sure.
I wasn't there. But once I got there, everything that was removed, basically I was just I had gloves on, but I was just using my fingers and just feeling through the dirt and removing the individual bones. But like I said, some of the bones are very, very, very small. And of course, the inside the dirt is admixed. There's some little rocks and other things. So once I removed everything that I could physically feel that looked or felt like a bone, then I dug several inches around the site and just lifted all that other dirt and put in a separate container so the pathologist who would be doing the exam the following day could go through that material to look for additional bones.
In addition to the bones, I believe you also testified that there was like tissue remnants found?
Yes.
And then what about, did you see any hair? Evidence of hair found at the scene?
I did collect a few small pieces of what I thought represented hair, and we did collect that as well.
Okay. Sir, as you were going through the excavation process and laying out the bones that you recovered, are you aware were photographs being taken of that as that was occurring?
Yes, there were.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit 20 through 36. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize, just briefly, if you could just go through those and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Okay, I've seen these pictures before, so these are representative of some of the pictures that the E-Crew person was taking as the specimens were being recovered.
And do they all fairly and accurately depict the images contained within the photograph
Yes,
as they appeared on that day on July 14th?
yes, they do.
You indicated that the skull bones had, or some of the skull bones had already been removed from the ground by the time you got there. Is that correct?
Yes,
I'm going to put States Exhibit number 20 on the screen. What are we looking at in States Exhibit number 20, please?
that's one of the bones from the skull.
And that's, do you know, is that one of the bones that had been removed before you got there?
I can't say definitively which one, but there were several of the larger bones of the skull which had already been removed when I got there. I can't say definitively which one,
Okay.
or the order that they were removed.
Putting States Exhibit 21 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That's another bone of the skull.
States Exhibit 22, what are we looking at, please?
That's another bone from the skull.
Doctor, is it unusual that the skull bone is in so many different pieces? Or when you're dealing with an infant's skull bones, is there something different about that?
Well, even into several 2, 3, 4 months of age, the bones are not fully fused, so there's still a soft membrane which connects the bones together, and there's an anterior fontanelle, or the soft spot up near the front of the skull, and there's a posterior fontanelle as well. So essentially, in a very young baby, once the scalp is reflected, you could just take a scalpel and separate those membranes, and literally the bones of the skull sort of open up like the petals of a flower. So they're not at that early junction fused or interconnected only by a membrane at that point.
And that's what I wanted to ask. So at this point, with respect to the decomposition that had occurred, you wouldn't expect to find the skull fully intact for a newborn baby. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Putting States Exhibit number 23 on the screen, what are we looking at, please?
That's another bone from the skull.
And States Exhibit number 24, what are we looking at, please?
That's another bone from the lower part of the skull.
And then after those skull bones were removed, you indicated that you began your excavation process. Is that right?
Yes.
Putting States Exhibit number 25 on the screen, what are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That's the actual site where the skull bones had been removed prior to my arrival, and then I just continued in that same site, just with my hands, just removing some of the dirt, and I could feel the other additional bones, and just we're removing them one by one.
Okay. Putting State's Exhibit number 26 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That's a picture of my two hands and my blue sleeve on my left arm, kneeling down there, removing some of the bones from the site. And the skull bones had already been placed on another body bag before I got there, and then they got this other smaller body bag when I started individually removing things from the ground.
Okay. And was that your process? As you removed small pieces of bone, you would place them onto that body bag?
Yes.
Putting State's Exhibit 27 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
It appears to be a little bit more of a close-up image of the actual site where the ground has been disturbed. And there's, again, some of that white material of some of the sort of decomposed tissue that was still present. I mean, there wasn't anything visible as far as organs or skin, but it was just some decomposed tissue that some of the bones were stuck to.
Putting State's Exhibit number 28 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Well, that picture has a few more bones than the previous photograph of the body bag that I just kept sequentially just pulling things out of the hole.
Putting State's Exhibit number 29 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Well, in that picture, it appears that there is some of the decomposed soft tissue, and looks like there's a bone that's sort of in the middle of it, sort of sticking out. And I was trying to put some of that in that bag, in a separate plastic bag, just for in the event there was going to be any potential use for DNA purposes.
And I think you said previously, but at this point, when you're going through and you're finding these bones, is there any skin? Is there any brain, heart, lungs? Are you able to see any of that stuff as you're excavating the remains?
No. I mean, there was hair. Subsequently, there were some very small fingernails that were in that area where I dug around when they went back through and found some very small particulate items, but there were no discernible organs. There was no visible skin, literally. I mean, there was just some very soft, still somewhat moist tissue that was non-identifiable as to its origin.
The rest of it would have all decomposed?
Yes.
Putting State's Exhibit number 30 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Well, that's a picture further into the excavation where a larger number of the bones had been laid out there. And again, because of the size of these bones, these were things that were more easily identifiable as far as being able to be removed by hand. Like I said, a lot of the smaller bones of the hands and the feet were subsequently recovered from the dirt that was excavated surrounding where these larger bones were found.
And I'm not going to ask you to identify, but as you're removing these bones, could you tell what kind of bones they were, whether they were arm, leg, ribs, or for the most part, were you just trying to get the bones and then that process would be gone through in more detail back at the coroner's office?
Well, to answer both parts of that, as I'm removing things, yes, I can tell what the rib is, what the clavicle looks like, the humerus, the femur, the tibia, the fibula. I mean, I could identify the bones, but at this juncture, I mean, my primary function was just the recovery, to recover the things and then I did not do any cleaning or removal of any of the dirt or tissue or anything of the bones. That was going to be for the pathologist and or anthropologist to subsequently do their job.
Okay. Putting State's Exhibit number 31 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Again, it's just another photograph of the same basic site there where I was removing the bones from.
Putting State's Exhibit number 32 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Well, in that particular picture, there was, it looked like an actual, kind of like a root, because there was some adjacent plant material, so there was some roots that had been disturbed in there, and it looked like there were some small hairs that were stuck to this piece of vegetation. So it was also taken as evidence for potential DNA analysis.
Putting State's Exhibit 33 on the screen. What are we looking at, please?
That just looks very similar to the picture from a couple photographs ago. And basically, it's just another photograph showing the sort of the discoloration in the hole where the remains were. The dirt, it just was a different color than the sort of the surrounding dirt that we were going through. Now, granted, it had been turned up at one point, so it wasn't completely compacted. So that's why it wasn't really necessary at that juncture that I was using any kind of tool to remove things or feel my way through there. Now, I did have to use a trowel when I went around the periphery to try to capture everything that was very small that could be encapsulated on the inside. But that's just another picture showing the discoloration of the soil there.
Putting State's Exhibit number 34 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Okay, on this picture, again, using the plastic bag, was trying to keep the material which may contain tissue that was decomposed separate from the actual white body bag where the bones were. So we were just trying to keep it separate, and that's what we were putting in this plastic bag.
And State's Exhibit 35 on the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
That's another picture with a lot of the bones. I mean, you can see ribs and long bones and bones from the pelvis. And again, a lot of these bones still have a fair amount of dirt and other organic matter stuck to it, attached to it, that I did not remove. So a lot of these things, in looking at it, you can't exactly tell what it is because there's a lot of exterior particulate matter attached to it.
And then finally, State's Exhibit 36. What are we looking at in this photograph, please?
Well, since you said finally, I would imagine that was probably the picture that may have had the most of these bones that I had recovered visible, like this.
What was done with all of the bones that were collected at the scene on July the 14th of 2007?
After we had finished, Investigator Burke and myself drove up to the Montgomery County Coroner's Office and took all the bags of the biologic material that we had recovered, and it was going to be examined the next day by the our end of the involvement.
Respond back to 104 Eagle Ridge Drive.
Yes, I did.
What was the purpose for responding back on that date, sir?
Well, what happened was on that day, Dr. Beth Murray, who's an anthropologist, she had been called by Dr. Brown, who was the pathologist who did the examination on the remains on Saturday, to come at her convenience to do an anthropologic exam to examine the bones and to generate an estimation of the gestational age based on the length of the long bones. So she came up there on Thursday, and I wasn't with her the whole time, but at some point I kind of popped my head in there and just to see what she was doing, and she was examining the remains and articulating the bones into a skeleton. And she told me that there were some of the bones that she felt were very dark. Burned. And I told her, I said, well, there was a fire pit in the backyard, but I said, we didn't even look in the fire pit. I mean, we just excavated the site where we were shown, where the people before me were shown to respond to. So she said, I'm not, this discoloration could be from thermal injury. So with her telling me that, I ended up calling Deputy Fain and told him, said, Dr. Murray has a concern that some of these bones, not many of them, but just a few of the bones, had a very dark color, and she was wondering whether or not this could represent some type of thermal injury. And then he said, well, we'll get another search warrant and go back out and put the purpose of looking in the fire pit.
And did you do that on July 20th?
Yes.
And what, if anything, was found at the location of the fire pit, Doctor?
Well, a lot of, ash, burnt pieces of burnt wood, what appeared to be chicken bones, some fish bones, nothing that appeared to represent anything human. Several of the evidence crew, deputies were there. We had multiple buckets. I was, digging through stuff, sifting through things in the fire pit, but I did not find anything that resembled any type of human remains.
And at some point while you were out there, were you made aware that there wasn't any fire at the fire pit?
That was communicated while I was digging in the fire pit, that had taken place in a subsequent interview that was ongoing at that time, that nothing had happened there in the fire pit. So at that point, and after filling up about 5 or 6 buckets, we stopped there.
Okay. And where did you proceed to?
Well, I think at that time some of the other evidence crew people had already sort of made their way to the backyard. So we went back to the original site, and within a very short period of time, one of the deputies found another long bone. I think it was one of the lower leg bones, and it was just right at the surface of the ground. And there were a couple other very small bones that were subsequently recovered during that day. But again, nothing from the fire pit, just a few additional bones from the original site.
I want to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 47. You can take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize what you're looking at.
Yes, there is a bone there on the surface.
And is that let me put it on the screen. Putting State's Exhibit 47 on the screen, is that the long bone that you were referencing that was found on July the 20th at the burial site?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't find it. One of the sheriff deputies found it.
Correct. And was that bone, along with the other, I believe you said they might have found some other smaller bones, or they weren't sure if they were bones, were all of those collected?
Yes.
And were they transported back to the Montgomery County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
If I could have one moment, Your Honor.
Mr. Richards, you may inquire.
Minutes check, looking for a photo check.
Okay.
Hello.
When you went back for the second search after Dr. Murray thought that the bones had been charred, you found more bones. I heard that. You didn't recover all the bones, though, did you?
I did not reconfigure the bones myself, so there could be a few smaller bones that may still be absent. I don't have the actual bone count of how many were eventually discovered. I mean, you'd have to ask Dr. Brown or the anthropologist on that.
It's Dr. Allen, I believe, is the anthropologist.
Well, Dr. Allen got married, so now she's Dr. Brown.
Okay, that's what's confused
She had a
me.
delayed name change, but she finally converted over, but she'll be here tomorrow.
So Susan Allen is really Susan now Brown.
Correct.
Gotcha. So you didn't look at the assembled skeleton and notice anything missing because you didn't see the photo? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, I was there, and then that afternoon is when they executed the second search warrant at the scene.
And I'm glad you clarified that because I wanted to make sure that we all knew that the same day that Dr. Murray, who's a forensic anthropologist, thought that the bones had been charred. That's what she relayed to you. You relayed it to Lieutenant Fain, correct?
Yes.
Same day. And then
Same day.
the same day was the search.
I called him while I was in the room where she was doing her examination. I mean, I called, as soon as she said that, I just thought he should know what her concern was.
Yeah. And according to Detective Carter's report we have here, she says that you actually said that the remains of the infant had been burned. Might you have said that?
I said that Dr. Murray was suspicious that there may have been thermal injury. I never would have gone out on a limb to say myself that they were burned because, I mean, they were discolored, but she's the anthropologist, I'm not. So that's why I defer to her to make that sort of interpretation, and which I was just the middleman, essentially, in relaying that information to Lieutenant Fain.
Gotcha. So she's wrong in her report saying that you had advised Lieutenant Fain that the remains of the infant had been burned. That's an incorrect statement.
Yes, that's
Thank
incorrect.
you very much. I'm not finished, I don't believe yet. Questions?
Anything else for this witness?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Dr.
Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are going to go ahead and break for the evening. A couple of things that are the same as they have been and will be, which is my instruction to you not to begin to talk about the case amongst yourselves, and also you are not to think about how this case ought to be decided. The danger that we have is when you come in the morning, a couple of you get here, maybe 4 or 5, maybe even more than that, and there's this temptation, because you don't really have much else to talk about the case. Don't do that. Resist that temptation. Don't talk about the case. Same rules apply yesterday when it comes to interaction with folks at home. Tell the folks at home you can't talk to them about it, and that they should assist you in keeping away from any media coverage. I don't want you reading anything about the case, looking anything up on the internet. Stay away from the media. Don't follow any social media links, all of those sorts of things. Do not drive by the Eagle Ridge Drive. And if that is somehow on your way home, find a different way to get home. You're also becoming a little bit more experienced in the HVAC of the courtroom, which is terrible. The guys do their best that they can to regulate the temperature. Sometimes we're tank top, sometimes we're parka, but you need to sort of dress accordingly, maybe layers or whatever you need to do so that you can be comfortable in the courtroom. I want to get started again at 8:45 tomorrow morning, so let's all plan on being here around 8:30 with the idea that we will start at 8:45. Mr. Mullins, you can take the jury out. You may be seated. We are on the record outside the presence of the jury. Prior to the testimony, we had a sidebar conference in which the defense made an objection, which I will treat as both timely and continuing, as to information regarding birth control laxatives, lighter fluid, and a lighter, maybe some other stuff. Is it Mr. Schuett that is going to be arguing that again?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Defense's argument was based on the photographs, as you stated, of the lighter fluid, the lighters, the birth control pills, the laxatives, diet or green tea pills, as well as the carpet swatches. Argument of the defense was and is that there's no temporal proximity. They can't tie it back. It's been 2.5 months. And any relevance that they could have would be substantially outweighed by any prejudicial effect to just march up a bunch of lighters. They can't tie to anything lighter fluid that was outside, as well as green tea pills, diet pills, laxatives that they can't actually tie to anything 2 months prior. And the birth control, we heard she had been just prescribed. So that was the argument of the defense, Your Honor.
All right, I think your objections go as to the weight of to be given to this evidence, not as to the admissibility. So I'm going to overrule the objections at this time. Of course, reserving final decision on the admissibility of these exhibits until they are offered.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else from the state? Anything else from the defense? All right, let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene off the record. We can meet in Judge Teep's jury room, just about a couple of housekeeping matters before we get started tomorrow. So you can take a break, get cleaned up, get stuff going, and then I'll see you in a few minutes. We're in